All right. Hello, everyone. It is the top of the hour, and welcome to today's INSEAD Tech Talk. I'm Peter Zemsky, your host, Professor of Strategy and Innovation. So if you want to learn more and understand better the intersection between AI and blockchain, if you're concerned about transparency and accountability in tech, you have come to the right place. Before we dive in, let me do a little bit of etiquette. The main thing to know, as many of you will know, is if you have questions, follow-up questions for the speakers and panelists, please use the Q&A tab. We have the audience audio is muted and even the chat is disabled for you. But the Q&A tab is open. Put short, to the point questions. If you want, you can vote up questions that you most want us to get to. The webinar is being recorded. If you have any technical issues, you can email our organizers at digital@insead.edu. So here we go. Let's dive right in. It's a complicated topic, got some great perspectives coming at you and diverse. There's Mona Tiesler, the MBA 20D. She's investment manager at Tokentus Investment. Jennifer Dodgson, co-founder, chief AI officer at Kit Protocol, and Jacob Guedalia, co-founder and CEO of Jiritsu. I will leave them to introduce their organizations in their own words. And we are going to start with Mona coming out and giving us a short overview of this topic. Mona, over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I will share my screen and just present some slides to you that essentially should give a little bit of an overview on the topic itself. Bear with me. There we go. All right. So quickly about myself, I am a MBA 20D from INSEAD. And prior to INSEAD, I was a strategy consultant for 4 years and then ventured in the entrepreneurial space, joined INSEAD, and after INSEAD first was an operator in the Web3 space, and then since January 2022 have been a venture capital investor focusing specifically on Web3 investments. And that leads me to today being able to be here to talk about the convergence of innovation between AI and decentralized technologies. In order to do that and set all of us up for, the right mindset, I'm going to go through some definitions because I want to make sure we're all on the same page when we use these terms throughout our webinar today. Firstly, what is AI? So AI is essentially the simulation of human intelligence by machines. An AI system performs tasks that typically require human intelligence and perception to perform them. And AI does span across a variety of subfields, which you may have known or heard about, which are machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, robotics, expert systems, and generative AI, which I'm sure we all have been in contact with through things like ChatGPT, for example. Web3 is potentially slightly more complicated, is essentially the next iteration of the internet, which is a decentralized internet based on blockchain technology. So essentially, decentralized means that instead of relying on a centralized server, Web3 applications, even organizations and whole economies run on decentralized networks like blockchains and ensure data and decision-making are distributed and don't rely on a centralized entity. And here, value is captured through so-called tokens, which represent things such as ownership, specific assets, access, and even work. So it gives more control to the users on their data and on their digital identities. And lastly, blockchain technology, which powers the Web3, is a decentralized distributed ledger that essentially securely records transactions across a network of computers or nodes that collectively reach consensus to validate certain transactions. And the use cases really go beyond cryptocurrencies, which I know we often associate with the blockchain technology, but it really has, in my opinion, the chance, the ability to revolutionize a lot of industries as we know them today. So briefly, to kick us off and actually talk about what is the synergy between AI and blockchain, Well, there are a lot of different schools of thoughts here. So I will just touch on some of the theories and conversations that are being had in the space. Firstly, essentially, one argument is that blockchain transparency can mitigate AI's opacity, while AI's data processing prowess can enhance blockchain's utility. What does that mean? Essentially, those two have quite a lot of complementary strengths. AI is more probabilistic, it changes, it is more centralized, therefore arguably less transparent, and it uses algorithms to take a guess at reality, often a very good guess and an increasingly better guess, but it is more of a guess. Versus blockchain is actually deterministic, it is permanent, it is more decentralized, hence more transparent, and uses algorithms and cryptography to record reality, a timestamp of reality. And how can they interact? What is the intersection? Essentially, you could say that due to blockchain being able to mitigate AI opacity, providing this timestamp and an audit trail, it can provide more verifiable inputs for AI models, serving as a foundation of trust and accountability so that AI systems can trace data back to a verified source. And blockchain technology can also be used to, therefore, kind of enhance or enforce rules that restrict access to unverified or unauthorized data within AI models. On the other side, blockchains can use AI for kind of certain complex computations, which are maybe inefficient or rather challenging for the blockchain itself to handle. So because AI can process, large data sets and extract meaningful insights, often these are still too complex for Oracle networks to compute directly themselves. And also, it's rather difficult to provide real-time data updates into smart contracts, which AI can arguably enhance. Quick information on definitions. Oracle networks are essentially systems that connect the blockchain to off-chain external data sources, such as price feeds. And smart contracts are a self-executing kind of program that is stored on the blockchain that automatically enforces the terms of an agreement when certain preconditions are met. So just to sum up this slide, in essence, AI can enhance the functionality and the decision-making capabilities by providing more sophisticated and dynamic inputs into smart contracts. But we will surely hear soon that none of this comes without its severe challenges. Quickly, some use cases at the intersection. We will discuss this a lot more with our esteemed panelists. But from a venture capital perspective, some of the things that we research, that we look out for in companies are some of these specific use cases, which are, for example, AI enhancing consensus algorithms, which means consensus on verifying a certain transaction is the way it is. Because AI can arguably improve security, scalability, and decentralization through being able to detect threats and optimize transaction speeds by predicting kind of optimal data pathways, this could arguably enhance consensus mechanisms in the blockchain space as we know it. In addition, aspects around decentralized finance could be revolutionized by AI to, improve and quite largely enhance the approach to arbitrage, to forecasting, to decision-making, potentially even using AI agents to optimize returns and risk exposure in the trading realm. Of course, if you have used any Web3 decentralized application, you may have thought it is rather clunky. That is often still the case. And there is a lot of research being done into understanding how AI can improve blockchain's usability, also simplifying complex operations and helping also with writing codes for developers, identifying scams, etc., just overall improving the usability of the decentralized Web3 space. And last but not least, and I know that we will talk a lot about this with Jennifer and Jacob, but there is also a lot of research and a lot of interesting projects popping up in the decentralized AI space, which means that instead of relying on centralized servers, AI models and training data can be distributed across nodes in a more decentralized networks, therefore enabling AI insights without relinquishing data control. And of course, there is also a lot of research going into the decentralized computation space, which essentially means that blockchain-based computing networks could allow complex GPU-based jobs to be distributed and processed over a distributed peer-to-peer network. But again, this doesn't come without its challenges and a lot of technological advancements and research that still needs to be done. So without further ado, I will hand over back to Peter. I just want to close with the fact that we need to be very aware that we need to be responsible in the way that we innovate, need to research and make sure that we, do a lot of groundbreaking technological advancements, but also with always thinking about regulation and ethical considerations. And without further ado, I will hand back. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mona, for laying that out. I'm going to now invite Jen and Jacob to indeed come out, and as Mona set up, talk about what does this mean in practice. So as I said, I'd invite you to introduce yourself. Why don't we go alphabetically? So Jacob, tell us a bit about yourself, but also especially about Jiritsu and what this interaction for AI and blockchain means for you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to be here and participate. So, my background is I've got a graduate degree in physics from the Weizmann Institute in Israel. My brother, who's been co-founder with me across multiple startups, has got a PhD in AI from the Hebrew University, going back to the kind of pre-neural network AI even. We've been successful, had a number of tech companies that have been acquired by public companies, and then found ourselves working on algorithmic trading for a very large quant firm in New York City, and then took that proprietary tech that we had developed and looked at how we might deploy it in the blockchain. And so we had these AI machine learning, call it algorithms, that we were trying to deploy in blockchain in 2017, 18, and essentially recognized that's when we were trading them, and then the blockchain stuff was closer to 2020. Recognized this thing Mona mentioned, that AI is opaque and you're trying to interface with what is a transparent space, and came up with the idea of compute verification and how important that would be in order to ensure that the AI is predictable. So the use case we thought about was, all transactions will happen eventually on blockchain. I'm convinced of that. 70% of transactions are motivated by recommendation engines, but how do you know the recommendation engine isn't trying to manipulate you in some way? And so to create that transparency, we started looking at ideas of verified inferencing. We've come back now to AI, but just to wrap up the introduction, Jiritsu, as a result, developed a verifiable compute infrastructure. As Mona indicated, blockchain is limited by access to data, limited compute, and no true automation. If you want to delegate that to an off-chain computer, you need an off-chain computer you can trust. So I think that will kind of give an indication of where my head is at around the AI and how blockchain can help.
Super good. We'll be digging in. Right. So Jennifer, over to you. Same set of questions.
Hey, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. So yeah, I am Jen, Chief AI Officer of KIP Protocol. And KIP Protocol is aiming to be the base layer for AI developers on Web3, which doesn't mean that we're going to be a layer 1 blockchain. What it essentially means is that we want to provide the toolkit that AI developers, whether they're developing models or apps or providing data or whatever, that they are going to use to get their models out there or get their apps out there and get them being used by real people with payment, obviously, either in fiat or in crypto, but access is token gated. And the idea behind this is that right now, to get started in providing AI services, you essentially need to raise, 100 million and be a huge tech giant and all the rest of it. And that is because you're expected to provide not just the model, but also the compute, the app front end, the payment gateway, everything, the marketing, the cleaning lady, everything that you need to provide, it's expected to come from one company. And what we're saying is that if the connectivity between the different components of this process were better, then you would be able to have small AI entrepreneurs everywhere, and everyone would be able to have a small AI business. So that is what we are doing. And yeah, we're rolling out right now. We've got an ecosystem site up for people to test if they want to try out the workbench. But then we're also doing what I would call bigger contracts that are still, less big than OpenAI, but almost everything is less big than OpenAI. So we do a lot of work with governments who are interested in sort of maintaining their AI sovereignty, because obviously these days there are a lot of governments that are smaller than Google, smaller than Microsoft, and so on, and they're a bit worried about the fact that all of their population is getting information from these 1-2 sources. So yeah.
Next. Okay, many things we can come back to, including whether AI might lead to more value creation in small companies, which would be interesting against the big tech trend. Also, some of the geopolitics. But maybe, Jacobs, let's dive into the transparency piece. So that's a clear thing blockchain could be bringing. How could it really enhance the transparency of AI? And what are some of the specific use cases for you and for others where you're starting to see this potential that Mona laid out actually getting realized?
Yeah, so I think that there's two elements to transparency, one that Mona touched on and one that I don't think was described. So the first is if when you've got, you call it your LLM, that's the essence of your AI that's running the function of AI. It has within it whatever it's memorized, right? And then separately, and generally where the separate value opportunity is, that you'll bring it your own data and you'll say, also utilize my data, which references your company or some other particular value that you're bringing in the form of data. You need to be able to have tracing and tracking of that data and be able to audit that data path and the chain of custody of that data. That's something that we've developed some technologies for. I could go into the details, but that is not a blockchain problem. It's really a cryptographic problem. How do you fingerprint the data? What the blockchain is good at is, as you run these processes, you can create logs and you can mint these logs immutably. The other thing that Mona did not mention is there's the actual workflow itself, right? So just as an example, my brother was a CTO at a company called Blue Dot, which uses the machine learning or AI to do tax filing on behalf of Fortune 100 companies, and reached 95% accuracy. So the tax authority said, okay, we're going to trust the AI to do this job. They did a job for a company in Turkey, and the Turkish government came and said, great job, but can you verify for us that you use the 2024 tax law, not the 2023 tax law? So what I'm pointing at is that in addition to data trace and auditability, you also have to be able to audit the workflow itself, right? So there's the workflow that is meta to the AI. There is the data trace, which, let's say, is kind of a sidecar to the AI, but all those things need to get traced and tracked. Those are not intrinsic blockchain problems. They're more cryptographic problems, the sorts of things that we're addressing through verifiable compute, off-chain solutions. However, they do avail themselves ultimately of the blockchain as a ledger where it can store it. So, in conjunction with other cryptographic technologies, you're able to create an auditable trail, but the real impact of the blockchain in that story is as the ledger where you store it for future audit.
Right. So just so I understand, Jacob, so you're saying there's a set of use cases where, okay, we got the LLM, I've got company A that's got data that it wants to mix in, and it's going to be doing it for some third party. And that whole thing, it's not just like an internal call, but it's really getting the transparency.
Even if it's an internal call, so let's say the essence of transparency for me in this context is auditability, right? So I can declare that I've done a bunch of things. I might not reveal it now, but at some point I might need to reveal it to an auditor, right? So I have to be able to have a trace of every action that's been taken create a log of that, and then commit that log to the blockchain for future audit so that I can't change my mind. So that means that later the auditor needs to be able to reproduce the things that you say you did, because it's not enough to say, look, I grabbed data from here and did this. You want to be able to reproduce, it said, therefore my taxes are that, right? And so that entire workflow is the thing you want to bring transparency to, and the way to do it is to have these workflows. There is an underlying problem, which is that the AI is still a black box, and that's a different problem that we're addressing as well. But I'll stop a second.
Mona, did you want to, before I turn to Jen, did you want a few additional words on your part around what you're seeing around use cases for accountability?
So on our end, I mean, we're so I've known Jiritsu for a while, and you know, I think what they're doing is really great, and I think it's a very, very clear use case. But on the other hand, you know, something that, just to maybe level it up a little for the audience, what we see is, for example, if you have a picture that is generated by AI, or you're not sure if it is generated by AI, right now, sometimes we often can't really tell the difference. But we could arguably use blockchain technology to verify the source of where, you know, this information to create this picture came from, the timestamp, and then, as Jacob pointed out, kind of the workflow. So how was this created? Why was this created? Essentially, to some degree. And blockchain technology can be used to have that audit trail. So even just verifying things that are for us maybe deep fakes or worrisome information that is spread out across media that is just false, blockchain could be used in order to verify where this data came from, at least in the first place, and what the workflow was used in order to create this, which I think is also something a lot of us can relate to, probably.
Well, again,
And not to be too nerdy or pedantic, but the other thing that you can do with blockchain is you can manage identity. And so you could sign your pictures, and you can say, if it's not signed by me, it's not mine.
Yeah. And just curious, what are you seeing in terms of activity? So you seeing many people forming projects? Are you seeing investor interest? At a high level, how's that part of the ecosystem developing?
There's a lot of investor interest in the intersection between AI and blockchain technology. I know we're going to speak a little bit about technical challenges. I think that's where, you know, you will see that some of the projects that have been researching and working on this intersection for a very, very long time, in my opinion, like KIP and Jiritsu, they understand really the technical challenges, versus a lot of projects are using buzzwords as well in order to, you know, maybe increase their valuations a little bit, as this is a topic and an area that is very exciting and hyped across different, you know, venture capital industries and focuses. But yes, there's a lot of interest and a lot of projects building in the space, but I think there's a very big difference in quality.
Very good. All right, let's definitely bring Jen back into the conversation. So as you said, the technical challenges create the challenges, but also obviously opportunities to be solved. So Jen, I don't know if you wanted to comment a little bit on your views around accountability, but then start to lay out what some of the technical challenges are around turning these visions into reality.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues is sort of the right to say no to having your data exploited, but also the right to say yes. So one of the big issues, obviously, that people who are interested in KIP protocol are facing is just the fact that you know, people tell a lot of stuff to the AI, and you don't necessarily want someone who also has your credit card number to know that you're in love with your 8th grade teacher and also you have terrible piles or whatever. They're not necessarily going to do anything with that information. You just feel a bit weird having it out there. But at the same time, there are other people out there who are really in favor of model training, and they absolutely want to contribute the data to models. And something like Twitter blocking scrapers, they're kind of disappointed about that. They wanted to live forever in the AI, and now it's not going to happen. So they're actually actively contributing their data to data DAOs like Varna to train alternative models. And yeah, so that's kind of the place that I think blockchain in particular can help in just granting or withholding access to specific utilities, because that is what blockchain is all about. Creating this either unhackable key or an unhackable lock, and then yeah, you're good. Regarding
maybe to probe a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You know, the AI stuff is just takes off so fast. I mean, the scalability demands are high. Is blockchain, you know, able to keep pace in terms of scalability and you know, just the economics of doing some of this?
Yeah, I think it's very variable depending on the project. And someone in the Q&A brought this up about the cost of doing stuff on chain and the fact that you're adding gas to every transaction. So yeah, it depends a lot on the project, and there are a lot of projects out there that have just stuck AI and blockchain in the title without any consideration for how they're going to be used. Yeah. So obviously we're kind of mainly focused on just setting up these payment rails. So blockchain is possible, fiat is possible, and we're using token gating instead of API key pairs. So that is a solution that we're using.
Less technical members of the audience, why don't you just unpack that for folks?
So essentially, if you want to access a model via API, the usual method to do that would be to pay for an access. So you pay with your credit card, and then you get X usages of the model per month. But if you don't necessarily want to pay with your credit card, you don't want your name on it, which, you know, the obvious use is the sex chatbots. But there are also things like code models, which, if they are uncensored, end up being illegal in certain jurisdictions. And you might want them for totally legitimate reasons, but it's still an awkward situation that you're in. So if you can gate access via token ownership rather than API keys, that means you can access these models anonymously, which is sort of our key selling points. Yeah.
Interesting. What so I don't know, what is there an interaction between sort of open weight models and the kind of stuff you're doing? So I guess this is particularly if I'm going in to a closed model, like I'm doing API calls on Claude or ChatGPT or OpenAI, you're going to enable me to do anonymous calls as opposed to just downloading Grok 1 and doing it. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our position on this is kind of that closed source is good, open source is good, whatever you want to do. But probably the best way to sort this out is actually via the market. So if you have one big model, however virtuous it is, it's going to be wrong for a proportion of people. Or it's going to make decisions, you know, oh, you're not allowed to say things that are sexist or whatever, and it's going to get some of those wrong as well. But if you have 1,000 smaller models that people can vote with their wallets and choose themselves, then the cream is going to rise to the top naturally. So that is our position on this. And we're just using blockchain as a vector to sort of facilitate this. I know there are other companies that are doing, for example, crowdfunding GPU on-chain. So you invest in a GPU and then you get a portion of its returns from the data center. And that is also a great idea. That is something that is, it's on chain, but it's not, you know, inflicting huge amounts of gas on people. So yeah, very feasible idea. The data DAOs that I mentioned, that's another way where you can crowdfund something. You put some effort in and you get some tokens back.
Nice. Mona, Jacobs, any additional thoughts on this technical?
I think you know, Jennifer, my approach is, I'm not sure which is top down and which is bottom up, but it's really very different in terms of thinking about the value chain and how AI integrates with blockchain to create some value. So hopefully I'm capturing it accurately. I think what Jennifer and Kip are doing is they're looking at how blockchain essentially can create a marketplace that is decentralized, democratized, and fair and managed around the AI ecosystem. Our point of view is actually quite contrary to that really, to get to the best AI, unfortunately, you need scale. I think we're reliant on the goodwill of people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg to make stuff open source, to kind of create the opportunity. But we're focused on where can AI make the blockchain better at what it does best. and where can blockchain make AI better. So first of all, we're focused on the inference mode, which doesn't have the cost. It's the post-training mode, so it doesn't need the 200,000 GPUs, that are shaking the foundations of the electric, grid. But it's simpler computers. And then we're asking ourselves a question as to what use cases in blockchain would benefit from AI. Well, for any of those to work, that AI has to be trustless or trusted at the same level as the blockchain itself. Otherwise, it undermines the entire purpose of the blockchain and won't serve as a true blockchain use case, because a true blockchain use case is only interesting when it has trust, right?
Just to make sure I'm following you. Would you say that like open weight models, like the stuff like Llama, like Grok, are going to be more fit your vision?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was following.
Well, because if you look at how the energy is flowing or the value is flowing, it's going in two directions. So one direction is the AI is doing something for the blockchain that the blockchain can't do for itself, because the blockchain is dumb and the AI is smart. So you want something smart to help that dumb thing, which is the blockchain. But the only use cases that actually will happen on the blockchain are the ones that need the blockchain's special sauce. Otherwise, they will happen on other platforms. So you can basically filter down, however, series of Venn diagrams and say, okay, use cases that require trust at the level of the blockchain are the ones that we're going to target. And now we're going to solve for the fact that though AI is smart, you can't trust it because it hallucinates and because it's centralized, right? So you solve the centralization problem by moving into the open models, and then you solve for the trust through cryptography and consensus mechanisms, which is the expertise that we've built around off-chain verifiable compute. So we basically say, how can AI make actions on the blockchain, make better actions on the blockchain because it's smarter? Well, again, we're filtered only by those things that could be trusted, right? And therefore, we cannot be operating in the world of the centralized models. Right. So if you look at what Coinbase has done, they've said, oh, you can create an agent using ChatGPT, right? And we're going to give the agent a wallet and let the wallet go do stuff on the blockchain, right? The problem is everything Jennifer was saying, like, well, why do you want your information at ChatGPT? And what if ChatGPT, upgrades their version tomorrow and all of a sudden it's spending your money willy-nilly? So you have to kind of move out of that centralized frame, right? You have to attack the both the lack of transparency and the kind of the wild spirit of the AI, right? So that it can be trustless and function within a true blockchain use case, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Mona, would it? I mean, or anyone. So would you agree then that like so the blockchain community overall will tend to lean heavy towards open weight or open source LLMs? Is that what we're seeing?
I think the first thing you'll have the lazy mode in
Yeah.
which people will be like, oh, I can just use like a centralized thing. But then, things like Kip will come along and help people understand that they can do better. They can have decentralization. They can have, other pathways that are better. And then we'll do our job and say, that's really cute that you're using OpenAI and something centralized, but it's completely against anything you're trying to do on the blockchain. So if you're doing it on the blockchain, you cannot be doing it with a centralized model. And we're going to make the open model safe.
You put a lot out there. Jennifer, I see you nodding. You want to voice over a little bit your reactions?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is likely the way that it's going to be going. I think just these past couple of weeks, we've seen the AI meme coin meta just take over crypto discourse.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is kind of nonsense or just straight out vapor. But it is also getting people interested in AI. And I know a few guys who started out saying, oh, I can make an AI meme. And they started out just making the minimum effort thing with GPT, and then they kind of got into it and they started prompting, and they were like, okay, well, I'm actually going to try DeepSeek with this now, and I'm going to learn LangChain, and I'm going to make it do more complex things. And the meme coin is now kind of, I don't know what happens to the meme coin, but they're really into the agent at this point. So yeah, it's evolving, I would say.
No, it's there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of movement, so it's going to be a very interesting space to watch. That's for sure. I want to sort of let the conversation roll, but maybe we should just pause around just going deeper on the data sharing stuff. I mean, you've been bringing it up, but can really, Jacobs, you started us on this, but really around more use cases about how, and more technical issues around how blockchain can help AI with some of the data issues it has.
Maybe
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
Mona, why don't you go next?
No, please. No,
Just
Mona.
very briefly,
Please.
I'll do the high level before the real experts come in. But I guess one of the things I guess that we've been seeing a lot is, and we did touch on this, but kind of distributed AI training to, on blockchain to enhance like scalability without exposing the sensitive data, and using technologies like zero knowledge proofs that can enable verification of computations without kind of revealing sensitive information, and therefore improving security and efficiency, are aspects that we've been seeing utilized by a variety of blockchain and AI intersection type companies in order to mitigate some of the data privacy, data sharing issues. I know both Jen and Jacob probably have a lot to say on this, but from an investor perspective, these are often mitigations or solutions that we see that are implemented by startups.
Jen, do you want to jump in on this part?
Yeah, I think I want to jump in, but I suddenly realized that I don't have a great deal to say. I think that everything is so chaotic right now that it's kind of really hard to predict, and that is based on our personal experience of fundraising this spring and then going through the bear this summer, and suddenly everything is back, and now all of the exchanges have queues of 500 projects waiting for listing. I think we have sort of two intersecting hype cycles going on right now, and the wave patterns that result from those two are really difficult to predict. I was kind of, this week I was kind of saying I feel like crypto plus AI, it might be tapped out at this point, and everyone I spoke to was like, no, it's 100%. Let's go. This is good for the next 2 years. So yeah.
Jacob.
Yeah, I think to utilize some machine learning terminology, when thinking about the space, it's very easy to overfit because the universe of solutions is quite big, and the only way to solve overfitting is with constraints. So to answer the question, I constrain my thinking in a very specific way. I do not want to work on problems that include the word blockchain unless the blockchain is the best way to solve that problem. So that's the first filter I put on it. So AI can do everything. So therefore, the smaller set is the set of things that blockchain can do. So I start with what is it that one wants to do on blockchain? And I believe the most important thing on blockchain is transactions. So then the next question becomes, how can AI help blockchain do transactions better? Either going back to the original recommendation engine I talked about, or just an intelligent agent for doing investments for you. And then you say, well, there's a fundamental problem, which is that compute, that off-chain compute in its first order is centralized. It can't be centralized. You got to move it out from there. And then the next thing is you can't trust it. So how do you make it trustworthy enough that it can participate in a blockchain transaction without contaminating it with, hallucinations?
Just to connect the two, I think it's really important. We've seen hype cycles in blockchain many times, and one of the key lessons is if your use case doesn't really have a rationale and create value, it's not going to work in the long term. So I think just reminding people of that, I think is super valuable. So I wanted to ask a slightly different question that just prompted by listening to you is, okay, how is, the blockchain community incredibly vibrant, but there are these big alternatives. There are these other players, which are particularly the big tech players. So and governments as well, which are now more active. So, Jen, when I listen to you, you can build like a decentralized world where the different pieces are interacting. But at the same time, we know the big cloud players, AWS and Google Cloud and Azure, are also doing a lot of that, right? And so one question would be, how do you see the relationship between the kind of stuff that you're building, the solutions, and these big cloud players? To what extent do you work with them, or are you really trying to build substitutes? And then the other one is government. So like, Jake, listen to you, some of the stuff around, as you said, it would be great if government caught up and other institutions, so that audits really were required that could use the modern technology, and yet moving those institutions is hard. Anyway, I don't know if that prompts any reactions, but tried to stir the pot a little bit. Jen, do you want to start? Any comments on the big cloud players, which, if anyone is winning so far in AI, it's probably them after NVIDIA. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, we use AWS and GCP. So we're undermining the enemy's resources, that's the philosophy. Yeah, I think it's interesting, because one of the main things that we've actually seen with the whole AI boom that's happened since 2017 has been that so much of the foundational work has been done by small guys, and the big guys have been kind of left behind mainly out of timidity, not out of lacking the resources. So the Transformers paper that was out of Google, and they didn't take advantage of it. It was OpenAI, which then was this sort of eccentric little millionaire's castle dream thing. And they were the ones who made it into this huge juggernaut of the business that it is now. Midjourney, that was self-funded, I think. Stable Diffusion, Emad, he paid most of the compute costs out of his own pocket for that. So it's really people doing stuff on their own that then got taken up by the big tech companies. And even now, I think when I talk to people, it's, yeah, sure, Bing is okay to play around with, and people have genuine affection for Claude. So Claude has been one of the big success stories. But people really get excited about stuff like DeepSeek, which is again a company that just came out of nowhere. So yeah, I think there is room for new players to emerge at this point.
Oh yes, for sure. So much change. Other reactions. I'm going to start working in some. I've been reading audience questions, and that's been influencing me a bit. But definitely, if you guys are okay, maybe a little bit on the ethical side. So where obviously it's on a lot of people's minds. It's their strengths and weaknesses in both AI and blockchain on this. Anyone have a sort of a perspective on the ethical dimensions of this interaction?
My point of view is that when it comes to ethics, my job as a builder is to ensure that there's sufficient transparency that then whoever's law is in play can enact their law, and I'm not undermining that. And in crypto, it's about, you don't do mixers and things that undermine the ability to trace. Because I don't, think if we talk philosophically, ethics is a consensus. So I certainly can't be responsible for it, and I just have to make sure that the consensus opinion as to what's ethical, I'm not stopping it from operating.
Yeah, but again, for you, there's that real by staying close to the foundational principle of transparency, you feel that then you will be supporting the broader social systems trying to assure ethical behavior and legal.
I don't know. I don't like the word restore, but keep the balance at, according to. Yeah, obviously I don't agree with the laws of all countries. There are lots of countries whose laws I don't agree with, but that's why I don't live there.
Yeah, that's good. Jen, how much do ethical issues come up as a chief AI officer over there?
Only ever in panels, really. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, To a huge degree, I feel like it's a do your own research thing. There are so many things like the Reflections project, the AI Reflections project, which was a new project, came out a few weeks ago. Everyone's saying, oh, this is marvelous. It's going to be 10 times better than Llama and so on. And it turned out they were literally just feeding data from the Claude API through to users. They had no model of their own. And that was worked out by people on the internet who were investigating this thing and doing it for the love of doing it. And the decentralized AI community tracked this down and absolutely heaped scorn on this guy. Same thing happened a few weeks before. There was a team out of Stanford that claimed to have made a new LLM, and that turned out to be a knockoff of a Chinese one from a few months back. And again, that was sort of, these are the second one was, it was a black box, and people still managed to say, okay, we've worked out what this actually is. It's not what it's pretending to be. So yeah, I'm sort of very kind of market oriented, I guess. The market will work out what is a scam and what isn't, and sanction people.
Right. And what's your views? So one thing is ethical, what you should do, but then there is the regulatory environment, which has been quite differing between markets and regions, evidently. Any comments on how that's playing out? Obviously, the Trump election is going to add additional dynamics to that. Any comments on sort of what you're seeing on the regulatory side, or what are people anticipating?
It's pretty interesting because there was a deep-seated dislike of AI ethics on the part of engineers for a very long time. There was this sort of perception that, you know, you're going to get 100,000 a year to train a model and then 200,000 a year to call it racist. So it's not fair what is going on here. And to a degree, I feel like the AI ethics guys kind of ate their own lunch. They pushed things too far, and they encountered a lot of resistance as a result of this. But I do think it is the sort of the fact that the incoming Trump administration seems more pro-tech in general, that will actually give a breathing space for people to consider AI ethics outside of this culture war where it's us versus them, and there's no middle ground possible. So yeah, it's hopefully a positive thing.
Yeah. Jacob, do you want to touch that topic?
I don't have a point of view.
Yeah, that's good. Mona, what are you just seeing in terms of, also even from where you sit, geographically, where some of how this will shift some of the center of gravity on the ecosystems?
Well, I think the interesting part is most of the companies that operate in the blockchain space, in the AI space, in the intersection, they are very global, right? So they're managing a lot of difficult aspects around different regulations, about unclear regulations, about speculation on what regulations will be, around, economic and macro aspects around elections and new administrations, etc. And I think in general what we're seeing is that it is very difficult for startups to manage this, and it takes a lot of discipline and focus, and it does make a startup, in my opinion, better than another one if they are willing and able to understand ethical considerations, regulatory considerations, also humans and their actions and their preferences, and combine all of that together in providing a solution to the markets that is really needed and that our people are really willing to pay for, and that really make a dent and create new innovation. And that is a very hard mix to find. But KIP, Jiritsu, and many others are innovating very, very effectively in that space. But I think it's a very tricky aspect to navigate for companies that are building within AI or blockchain tech.
Yeah. So I would say a year ago, blockchain was one of the places that the US lagged on, right? From a regulatory point of view, it was just the uncertainty was too great. You felt the hostility in the bias. Anyway, has that just completely flipped now?
I don't think it can
Seems
completely flip,
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's what you said. Yeah,
seems to be, yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens.
yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch. Okay. Let me just think what else I've got in the questions for you. Actually, Jacobs, maybe do have one question, but I'm super intrigued by what you're talking about. The ability of blockchain to deliver, and cryptography to deliver more auditing. How do you see that? Can you tell us a little more about how that could play out?
Yeah, it's not super mysterious, because what cryptography can do is it can, so to speak, fingerprint things, right? Easily. So every piece of data, and I guess every piece of data and every transaction has a fingerprint, and then that fingerprint can be written to the blockchain. So now you have something immutable, both in terms of a unique fingerprint for that data, and when when the action happened. So I think that's really well understood stuff. It's about building the systems to do that. I think that the more intriguing thing is, how does cryptography, as kind of a first cousin of blockchain, bring a consensus mechanism to the AI
Mm,
to actually attack some of the uncertainty that is intrinsic to the AI. Or what I would say boldly is, how does blockchain fix the hallucination problem?
mm.
And that's something we're working on.
Interesting. Watch that space. I'm wondering, just as someone who's deep in this, I mean, there is all this excitement around AI and all the compute that's going in. It's sucking a lot of oxygen out of the rest of the tech ecosystems. If you have, but what's your view? Do you have a view on sort of AI limitations, compute limitations?
Oh yeah, you're shilling for me. My I would say two things. One, software is eating the world and AI is eating software. And it's actually quite a scary time to be an entrepreneur, because it's very hard not to come up with an idea that's not probably roadkill and on the eventual roadmap of the big behemoths.
Yeah.
And that's why you see things get funded when they're super ambitious. I separately have a perspective. My son, who's 10, asked me what does the future hold with AI, and I said it looks more like Star Wars than Terminator. And the reason for that is, I think many people perceive that AI is going to grow and basically be able to surpass the abilities of humans to think, but Penrose, the great physicist, has really explained and articulated well and shown how, through mathematical theorems, specifically those of Gödel, you can show that algorithms, which are the limiting factor for anything a computer is going to do, including an AI, are not capable of getting to the same level of understanding as humans. And it's not an easy thing to communicate. But one way to think about it is that we understand, if you show me a grid that's 3 by 5, I can understand that 3 times 5 is the same thing as 5 times 3, because they're both on the same grid, right? A computer cannot understand that and cannot extrapolate that further. And as soon as you look at that grid and you're like, oh, it's 3 dots by 5 dots, it's 15 dots. So 3 times 5 or 5 times 3 is the exact same thing. Immediately, I could tell you like 7,226 by 243 is also the same thing in reverse, right? Because you got it, you understand it. It's the same thing, right? Computers cannot take that basic step. So because of that limitation, I believe we are going to see it hit a wall, and humanity in some finite amount of time is going to recognize that we have capacities beyond what computers have. And then we're going to develop those capacities, and life will look more like Star Wars with the Force.
We're going to start wrapping this up before we get too much into the stars. Maybe Jennifer, same for you. What kind of things are, as you said, chaotic times, so much going on. What are the kind of things that are exciting you or concerning you when you step back and you think about how this is going to play out over the next year?
Oh, yeah. So my alpha drop, I guess, would be text diffusion models. So there's just a paper that came out about converting this regular autoregressive models to diffusion models, which gets rid of a lot of the scale problems that were previously an issue with generating text from diffusion. And yeah, diffusion, they're going to be more creative, less human-like, capable of forming their own societies, hopefully. I'm not yeah. I'm hoping they manage to break the computation barrier and FOOM, but yeah, big on.
We'll get the site for you from that paper, and we'll include that in the follow-up. Mona, for you, same kind of question. You're watching all of this go through, the stream of entrepreneurs coming at you. What excites you about the year ahead?
To be honest, I think what we're finding is that, and I think I've mentioned that before, a lot of companies are trying to solve for a similar problem, but they're using a variety of different ways to get there. And as I am not a builder, sadly, I wish I was, because I find it absolutely fascinating. So I wish I had a little bit more technical background to sometimes really deep dive beyond a business understanding. But there is so much research, so much building, so much innovation, so much thinking, discussing happening, that I'm just excited to see some of the fruits that are being born out of, you know, these discussions and this research. And I hope to be there talking to builders, working with builders in order to support them with funding. And I don't know where we're going to go, but I think, you know, we have two really good examples with us today, which are, I think, very strong contenders for doing really well in the upcoming, you know, new landscape of that intersection.
Very nice.
Mona,
Cool.
you know I'm a fan, but I want to say I thought your two slides, the synergy between AI and blockchain and the innovative use cases, did a really great job of capturing kind of the matrix of opportunities and how people are attacking them.
Very nice.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. And then for both of Jen and Jacob, really, I think bringing that to life and showing what that means when that rubber tries to hit the road was much appreciated. So on behalf of—
When the AI meets the blockchain.
When the AI meets the blockchain, watch this space, folks, and watch these companies. Thank you for taking time with us. So many follow-up questions, but we're going to call it quits for now and see how things play out in the coming months. Take care, everyone. We're over and out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.